Here we go. It's week one. It's Thursday. The game is tonight. We got the Eagles and the Cowboys. The NFL season is here. All the drafts we've done. Finally get to see it put into action. I'm Jamey Eisenberg. That's Dave Richard. That's Heath Cummings. This is Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. We are going to talk about a lot of rankings. We're going to start with our quarterback rankings. But first, how excited are you about the NFL season kicking off?
I'm very excited. We put a lot of hard work and effort into these rankings, and now it's time to see where we're right and where we can learn from them.
The big payoff. We get to watch Javonte Williams be the lead running back for the Dallas Cowboys.
What we've all been waiting for. I hope Javonte Williams is not the best running back in this game tonight, but we'll see where they stack up in our rankings.
Big problems if that happens.
There would be a lot of big problems. We're going to start with the quarterbacks. So we're going to show you our consensus rankings. You can see our individual rankings. And yes, they are on the site, cbssports.com. You can check out our week one rankings. But here's our consensus rankings for our quarterbacks. So no surprise with the five guys at the top. These were the five guys that were drafted in some order: Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, and Jalen Hurts. Patrick Mahomes, number 6. And then we get to number 7, where things get a little bit of a change from what our consensus rankings are. Dave, when you see Dak Prescott, number 7, you're the high guy on Dak. You think he's going to have a big game tonight against the Eagles?
I don't think a big game is in line, but a decent game against Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm terrified. Their team totaled 19.5 points against an Eagles defense that had lost some guys, but also has so many young former first-rounders that could be improved this year.
All right, you see Baker Mayfield should have a good game against the Atlanta Falcons. Bo Nix should do whatever he wants to against the Tennessee Titans, just based on how the game flow should go. And then we got some other quarterbacks here that we're going to look at. Kyler Murray is in a great spot taking on the New Orleans Saints. As we flip the page to rankings 13 through 24, you're seeing some guys here that we are very fond of for this week. Drake Maye is the start of the week. We'll talk about that in a second. Heath, you really like Trevor Lawrence, though, for this week.
Absolutely. Fantastic matchup. First time we get to see him with Liam Cohen. First time we get to see him with Travis Hunter. He should be a top 10 quarterback this week.
All right, so we'll get into a lot of these rankings. We're going to break it down from guys that we like to start, guys we're going to avoid from a sit perspective, some sleepers that we like, and also some news that we're keeping an eye on. So Matthew Stafford and Jordan Love both off the injury report on Wednesday. Dave, any interest in starting those guys? Stafford in his matchup against the Texans and Jordan Love taking on the Lions.
I mean, modest interest in Love, and in DFS, I'd be more interested in both of those guys because I'm just trying to have a different lineup. But in redraft, absolutely not.
All right, so some fantasy managers, 14-team leagues, 16-team leagues, you might have to start one of those guys. I think we all probably agree Love over Stafford, just given
a lot.
The circumstances and the matchup. All right, let's talk about some of the things that we're looking at here. And again, the rankings for us, we spend a lot of time going through this to make sure that the process comes out to where it's good for everybody, depending on who you follow. You might follow Heath, you might follow Dave, you might follow me. But again, we're looking at the consensus rankings. So there's always one player at every position, maybe 2, maybe 10, that we're going to be a little bit of like, man, I like the matchup, but I don't like the player. I like the player, I don't like the matchup. Who is the toughest player for you to rank week 1 at the quarterback position?
It's Purdy. And it's because I think that Seattle defense could end up being a lot better than we think it is. And I think their pass rush is going to be dangerous. And we don't know how healthy Juwan Jennings is and how quickly Purdy will be able to get the ball. And there's that guy back for 49ers, that running back, Christian McCaffrey. Handing off to him doesn't get him any fantasy points. He's outside of my top 12.
Interesting. You also have not a great feeling about Brock Purdy this week.
Not a great feeling. It's getting better as Juwan Jennings is working his way back into things. I think and we've heard a little bit like this idea of Ricky Pearsall as the number 1 wide receiver and Sky Moore and Russell Gage maybe as the number 2 and number 3. Pretty terrifying to me. Another game that doesn't have an extremely high over-under. And so, yeah, a little bit nervous about Purdy. If Jennings gets in a full practice by Friday, I'll move Purdy up a little bit.
Okay, so we'll see how Jennings goes, but trending in the right direction. Jennings we'll talk about a little bit. Got his contract extension based on some playing time incentives, and you brought up, which is a great situation. He's going to play through some injuries, most likely because he wants to get to that $3 million that the 49ers have dangling out in front of him. But good that situation got resolved. The toughest player for you to rank, though, Heath, is who?
It's got to be Caleb Williams. And it's partially just the juxtaposition between what we thought Caleb Williams was a year ago at this time and what we saw from Caleb Williams on the football field. But then also he gets Ben Johnson. He gets Colston Loveland. He gets Luther Burden. We heard a lot in training camp about, oh, man, he's struggling, things look ugly. And then we see him in the preseason against the Chiefs, and he looks awesome. Caleb Williams could be one of the breakout quarterbacks of this year, and it could start week 1. But also there's plenty of reason to have concern.
Did have one great game against the Vikings last year, one miserable game, but that was, as the season evolves, we'll see how it goes into year 2, but more importantly, Ben Johnson. So hopefully it is a good start for Caleb Williams. I don't know how many people are starting him in 1 quarterback leagues, but, should be interesting to see how he does for Superflex and 2 quarterback managers. For me, the toughest guy to rank is Patrick Mahomes. We're, I think, all excited to see how this is going to look. But the history against the Chargers last year, not very good in those 2 games. No Rashee Rice, as we know, for the first 6 games of the season. So you're starting Mahomes. Obviously, nobody's going to tell you to sit Mahomes. At least, I don't think anybody here is going to tell you to sit Mahomes. No. But I hope to see him come out and have a big game so that we can justify he was a steal potentially in round 4, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with this again. A guy's going to hover around that 20-point per game range. So let's go for a big game for Patrick Mahomes as he takes on the Chargers in Brazil. So Chargers had his number last year. We'll see what happens for this year. Let's move on now to guys that were starting for this week. So Heath, you're starting Jordan Love. Dave, you're starting Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to start Drake Maye again at the start of the week. So a little disagreement here on Jordan Love. So you actually like him for this week, and you're just a little tepid in terms of how you want to approach him for this week.
Well, it's almost like how I feel about Brock Purdy. He's okay, but I can find other quarterbacks I like better, and one that I do like better is Trevor Lawrence going up against Carolina. I know that defensive line is healthy. I still don't know how dangerous that pass rush is, and I don't know how deep that secondary is, and I do like that receiving core for Jacksonville, and I've got questions about their run game. So I think that there is a chance where Trevor Lawrence can come out of the week as a top 10 quarterback.
So I totally like Trevor Lawrence more than Jordan Love. Dave just sent his email in first, so I had to take the extra in my top 12. And Jordan Love is in my top 12. I think we'll see the pass rate rebound from last year because what they did last year, being one of the most run-heavy teams in the NFL, is not typically what we've seen from Matt LaFleur. I think the fact that he actually has a number 1 wide receiver and first-round pick Matthew Golden helps Jordan Love. And I know we just said he came off the injury report. It was his left thumb. He's healthy in terms of running the football. And so I think we see him bounce back as a rusher as well. He's QB 12 for me, so someone you can start definitely over Goff and Dak.
So a couple questions, because originally when I was writing starts yesterday, I had him as a start and then got a little nervous for a couple reasons. One, the history against the Lions, not great, and they're getting healthy on defense. So we're going to see new coordinator, Aiden Hutchinson back. How much will that impact Jordan Love from a high-end potential? No Jaden Reed, most likely, the way it's looking, trending in the wrong direction. So yes, he does have Matthew Golden, but no Christian Watson, we know, for the majority of the season, and now potentially no Jaden Reed. So can Jordan Love put together enough stats, enough production that you're going to say, okay, top 10 finish? Because that's kind of what I think I'm looking for with nobody on a bye.
No, I think he can, and I think the nice thing about the way the Packers receiving core was built before they got Matthew Golden was that they had 4 guys who were all kind of number 2 wide receivers, and if they lost 2 of them, they still had 2 guys that were number 2 wide receivers. Romeo Doubs will be just fine as the second guy behind Matthew Golden, and Tucker Kraft is one of the most efficient tight ends in the NFL.
That's the one that I'm looking for is Tucker Kraft. I think he could end up being second on the team in targets.
I hope so for the season. I don't love him for this week, though, just because the Lions were great against tight ends last year. They were great against me. He did score a touchdown, but only one of 3 guys to score a touchdown against the Lions from the tight end position. So if he does not find the end zone, it could be a little difficult for him. We'll talk about that later, though. For me, it's Drake Maye. He's the start of the week for us on CBSSports.com. Love the setup for him. My most drafted quarterback, my most rostered player overall. I think Drake Maye is going to get off to a great start against the Raiders defense. That still could be a work in progress. Yes, Pete Carroll's going to do some nice things with them over the course of the season, but I think the addition of Josh McDaniels, TreVeyon Henderson, Stephon Diggs, maybe Kyle Williams, just a lot of things to like about the scenario for Drake Maye. So use his legs a little bit in this game as well. He did that last year, would have been on pace in his healthy games to be the 3rd best rushing quarterback. So just a great setup for them at home against a team West Coast to East Coast. I think Josh McDaniels want to stick it to his old team as well. So like the setup for Drake Maye as a top 10 quarterback. Let's go now to the quarterbacks to sit, Dave. And Justin Fields was a guy that you started out liking in the offseason, or didn't like in the offseason, then you liked him a little bit, then you got off a little bit after watching him perform in the preseason. It's just a brutal matchup against the Steelers.
And the brutal matchups will continue after this week. You can look at the schedule and see that for yourself. But the Steelers know all about this guy. So even if he was a halfway decent thrower of the football, they would know here are his strengths, here are his weaknesses. The problem is that he's not that great of a thrower. He's a runner. The Steelers have done a great job against rushing quarterbacks over the years, and it makes me very nervous to start really a lot of Jets, but especially Justin Fields.
Yeah, the Steelers number 4 in fewest rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks last year, and as you mentioned, they faced Lamar Jackson.
2 games against Lamar.
Yeah, twice in a season, so they do a really good job under Mike Tomlin. Brock Purdy, we already talked about. You're a little bit concerned. If Jennings full practice, though, how much will you move Brock Purdy up and take him off this list?
So I've got him, I think, at 18 right now. He would get into the top 15. I don't think I'd have him ahead of Jordan Love, but I would definitely move him up. It's so interesting as good and efficient as Jauan Jennings has been when given the opportunity and the number of targets that went his way last year. I just feel better about Purdy, but not quite into the top 12 range because even guys who have practiced the full week after holding out, and I'm not saying Jauan Jennings was holding out, but those guys have often struggled in week 1.
I will say the one thing that I do like about Purdy, his track record against Seattle. including the 2 games last year against Mike McDonald, so to face this defense.
Sure.
He's been 20 or more fantasy points in 4 or 5 games, including both those last year. So I actually think he's not a bad play this week, but I understand, again, some of the concerns. Great week for quarterbacks this week for some of the guys that we're going to see. For me, I'm going to sit Jared Goff. Just a bad track record in Lambeau Field. 3 straight years in a row where he's been under 17 fantasy points. I want to see how this new offense is going to look. I want to see how much Micah Parsons is going to play and how much of an impact that's going to make on this defense. And so typically, if you're drafting a guy like Jared Goff, Brock Purdy's probably in a similar situation. If you're drafting Justin Fields in a similar situation, you're drafting these guys, you don't want to go to the waiver wire and pick somebody else up. Go see if Trevor Lawrence is there because he could have a better opportunity this week against the Carolina Panthers. Go see if some of these other sleepers we're going to talk about in a second, maybe not the Joe Flaccos of the world, but Jared Goff, Justin Fields, Brock Purdy, not exactly the best scenarios. So you might want to try and find another quarterback if, in fact, you didn't draft one, and there are some guys on the waiver wire. And then sleeper for this week, I think this is important because a lot of people, as we get into the running backs and wide receivers, guys you could pick up off waivers. So for you, it's Bryce Young. For you, it's J.J. McCarthy. For me, it is the old man, Joe Flacco. Make your case why Bryce Young could be a top 10 quarterback this week. Top 12 quarterback.
He's got Tedero McMillan, who might be a top 12 wide receiver by the end of this year. He was awesome at the end of last year. Second year in Dave Canales' system, facing a Jacksonville defense that may be just as bad as the Panthers defense on Bryce Young's own team. This could turn into the shootout of the week.
I see your Tedero McMillan, and I raise you Justin Jefferson because that's who J.J. McCarthy's going to throw to. Bears are going to play a lot more man coverage than we're used to seeing. That's because Dennis Allen is there. McCarthy can run a little bit on top of throwing to these great receivers that he has. It's not just Jefferson. T.J. Hawkinson's there too. And I think they're going to put some points up on Chicago's secondary, which is a little beat up right now.
Adam Thielen, don't forget about the old man coming back.
I forgot about Adam Thielen.
Yeah. It does suck that he doesn't have Jordan Addison, but it's going to be fun to see.
They got Adam Thielen. Same thing, right?
I think this is the most fascinating game to watch as a fantasy manager because you have all the things going on with the Bears offense and Caleb Williams and DeAndre Swift and just all the pass catchers. And then you have the whole situation of J.J. McCarthy. Can he be as good as Sam Darnold? Can he continue this Kirk Cousins to Darnold? You know, this is the guy that's got more upside maybe than both those two. Hopefully that continues. For me, I'm going to go with Joe Flacco. I know it's tough to say you're going to start Joe Flacco in a 1-quarterback league, but the matchup is as good as you could possibly find. And the last time we saw him in this offense, it was 5 straight games in a row with 300 or more passing yards, 5 straight games in a row with 20 or more fantasy points. And so opportunity is there. Matchup is great. I think Flacco can get you off to a good start if you're desperate. But it was just shocking to me when doing waiver wire this week that he's only 10% rostered. Now, I think that speaks to clearly how many people actually play Superflex in 2-quarterback leagues. But if he's on your waiver wire, go pick him up. It could be a 10-team league if you don't have some options on waivers. This guy could get you off to a very good start based on how he operates in Kevin Stefanski's offense. So I want to have Joe Flacco on my team, certainly in Superflex in 2-quarterback leagues, and maybe even in 1-quarterback leagues if you're stuck. Joe Flacco can help you. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We come back. Our buddy Robert Turbin is going to join us. We're going to break down running backs, look at the running back rankings, give you the starts, the sits, and the sleepers that you need for week number 1. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. You're taking a look at our running back rankings for week number 1, and we might have been a little concerned about Saquon Barkley, but not at all for this week's matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. Christian McCaffrey, he's back, going to take on the Seahawks. Going to be fun to see him out there doing his thing. Bijan Robinson goes from the number 1 consensus running back in the preseason to number 3. And Etienne, Heath, limited in practice on Wednesday, says he's going to be good to go. Are you fully confident in Etienne?
I'll be fully confident as long as that limited's removed before Friday. But it's not like there's a decision to be made on Thursday night. If you have both Saquon and Etienne, you just start both of those guys.
Yep, that's a good spot to be in. And we're joined now by our buddy Robert Turbin, former NFL running back. You remember him mostly from his days with the Seattle Seahawks. Robert, it's great to have you back with us here on Fantasy Football Today. So I'm going to ask you some questions about a lot of these running backs, and the guys will react to it as well. Let's start with the rookies, because a big topic of conversation with us, we haven't got a chance to speak to you. He's showing off hardware there. Which league is that from?
It took me 5 leagues to do it, but I do want the world to know that I am a fantasy champion officially.
Okay.
Now we lost in our league because of an unfortunate injury. I lost in the first round of the playoffs, but I did win a championship. They got a nice, I think this might be a picture of me right there. I don't know if you guys can see it or not.
Okay.
But, I got some good hardware to take home. My son wore this to school for 2 weeks straight.
That's amazing. Well, listen, congratulations. Unfortunately, you're not going to win it in our Fantasy Football Today league, but You'll try. You'll definitely try. Let's talk about some of these rookie running backs, Robert. So I want to ask you just we got a highlight game between Ashton Jeanty and TreVeyon Henderson. I think everybody's all in on Ashton Jeanty, but just the outlook for Jeanty and the outlook mostly for TreVeyon Henderson as this pass-catching running back that may work into a bigger role. What do you think about both these guys going into their head-to-head matchup this week?
Well, the two differences is Ashton Jeanty is going to get a lot of action right away. He's going to be involved, obviously, getting a lot of touches. He's going to be involved in the passing game for the Raiders, and it's going to be start to finish. And so from an opportunity standpoint, you like having Ashton Jeanty, because he's going to get the ball. Now, how impactful he is with the football, still remains to be seen. TreVeyon Henderson, is a guy that everybody's intrigued by because of what he was able to do in the preseason. Coming out of college, a little bit of high expectation there, but really shined on the preseason stage. And so you feel like over the course of the season, his opportunities will continue to grow. Maybe not so much right away, but I think he'll still be impactful in the Patriots offense.
Heath, I know you're really high on TreVeyon Henderson. Is this going to be a strong rookie debut, or is it going to be one of those, I can't believe Ramondre Stevenson did this?
I don't really expect Ramondre Stevenson to surprise us in any way. We have a pretty good idea what Ramondre Stevenson's going to do. He's going to go about 4 yards and fall down. But the key is, and I'm a little bit lower on TreVeyon this week than I am for the full season because of what Robert was talking about. I think it could take a couple of weeks, but if he does what he does in the preseason, if he just breaks off a 60-yard touchdown, it's just going to be over. And I'll probably tweet that. It's over. He's taken over the job. Give TreVeyon all the touches. You just don't know if that's going to happen in week 1. Against the Raiders, seems like a pretty good opportunity, or if it's going to happen in week 2 or week 3, and then he's going to take all the
I feel like that already happened within the last month where TreVeyon Henderson was making so many big plays that it was over. It's going to be really interesting to see it. We know the Raiders are probably, if it's a Pete Carroll defense, probably a lot of zone coverage. That opens things up underneath for any running back that can catch passes. This dude can do it very well, Henderson can.
Another guy we're looking at, Robert, is Omarion Hampton, and there's been some different reports about who would be the starter for this week now that Najee Harris is back after dealing with that eye injury. So tough matchup Friday against the Chiefs. What are we expecting from Hampton in his NFL debut in Brazil?
Well, I imagine Omarion Hampton's going to start, particularly because he's been there. Najee Harris did have the injury. He was out for a little while. So Omarion Hampton, he's been the constant in terms of being there, being at practice, being a part of this offense. And I think very similar to Jeanty, he's going to have a lot of opportunity. He's going to get a lot of carries, in this football game. He can catch the football out of the backfield. And so for that reason, I like actually Omarion Hampton a lot more than Najee Harris in week 1.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. And, maybe they see Najee get worked back in a little bit slowly. But Harbaugh did sort of refute that report. Now we're going to get Hampton starting. And so we'll see how he does against the Chiefs in that matchup on Friday night. Another guy I want to talk to you about, Robert, is R.J. Harvey. A little bit of a difference of opinion here about what will happen in week 1 against the Titans. I think I'm probably the most optimistic. Heath, you're probably the most pessimistic. Dave's Goldilocks. He's right in between there in terms of how the porridge will go. But in terms of R.J. Harvey against the Titans this week, Robert, what are you thinking?
I got to go with Heath on this one. I think that this is going to be J.K. Dobbins' backfield until otherwise. R.J. Harvey can make some plays. But, I think it'll be spotty, throughout the season as long as J.K. Dobbins can stay healthy. He'll be able to do some things on third down and make some plays, but I don't think he's a consistent starter in the way that some fantasy managers see him right now.
All right, so something to ponder there. You obviously feel similar. Not necessarily that Dobbins is going to start, but that
right.
I think a little bit cautious.
I think it's going to be a committee. I don't think J.K. Dobbins is going to have many 20-touch games. I don't think R.J. Harvey's going to have any 20-touch games as long as Dobbins is healthy. I think this is an underrated, tough matchup for running backs. Titans were very good against pass-catching running backs. They've been very good against the run in the past, and I don't think we see more than 10 to 12 touches for R.J. Harvey in this game. That might be too high based on what Robert's saying.
And he's the toughest player for you to rank this week as we're taking a look at some of the rankings and how we're going about this. So the toughest player for Heath to rank is Omarion Hampton. The toughest one for you to rank is Travis Etienne. For me, it's Tony Pollard just with the matchup against the Broncos. Robert, I want to stick there with you on Travis Etienne. Again, Dave saying it's the toughest player for him to rank. This Jacksonville backfield seems like it could be wide open. Tank Bigsby, Bashal Tutin, another rookie that has a chance to make some plays here. What's your take on this Jacksonville backfield for the season and also for the Week 1 game against Carolina?
Yeah, super difficult to rank where Travis Etienne kind of fits into this fantasy world because I think the Jaguars are going to kind of ride the hot hand whichever game that is. And so all those guys are going to get opportunities, in my opinion, and whoever gets hot, breaks a tackle, makes a big play, is probably the guy they're going to stick with throughout the rest of the game. And so that kind of hot and cold, I'm not a big fan of that inconsistency. You guys know that about me. So it makes it very hard to draft a guy like Travis Etienne on my roster.
Sure. Well, it makes it easy to draft him if you're doing it in the middle rounds or the late rounds, but we're past that point now. Nobody's drafting anymore. Now the question is,
You'd be surprised. There's still some people drafting.
There's still some. Are you? You still have any drafts?
No,
you
done,
guys?
done. Finally
I
done.
feel like our hay is in the barn. So now with Travis Etienne, there's going to be multiple running backs in the mix. I think Etienne's going to be the one to lead off. The Carolina run defense will be better than it was last year. It was atrocious last year. The second they lost Derek Brown on that D-line, they fell apart. D. Brown's back. They added Brown, another Brown on top of that, Bobby Brown. I think you're going to see Carolina's defense be a little bit stronger, and I think it's just too many questions for Etienne, so he's at best to flex.
I think that's the best way to approach it, but we'll see if one guy can take the step forward. You would like it to be Etienne based on where he was drafted, or if you were in the Bashal Tootin camp, you'd like to see maybe both guys in terms of Etienne and Tank Bigsby struggle, and then we see Tootin maybe get the opportunity that he needs because of those two guys in front of him. We'll transition now to the guys that we're starting, and I want to get your take, Robert, on Tony Pollard. But Heath, make the case why Tony Pollard is a starter for you in this matchup that could be very difficult against the Denver Broncos.
It could be very difficult, and this is a philosophical thing for me. Fantasy managers have to make their own decisions, but he averaged 24.2 touches per game when Tyjae Spears was out last year. I don't care if you're facing the 85 Bears. If you're going to get 24 touches in an NFL football game, I'm going to start you and hope you fall into some production. I think he probably catches 3 to 4 passes. Probably runs the ball 20 times. You hope he scores a touchdown. He's going to be a low-end RB2 this week.
Robert, what's the most touches you've ever had in a game?
In a game, the most carries I ever had in a game was 15. Touches, somewhere around maybe 24, 25.
Okay, so you would be a guy that Heath would be looking at in that,
Yeah.
that type of
100%.
scenario.
Yeah, I'm
Robert,
with
just your
Heath
take
on this
on Pollard without Spears there. How do you think he'll do against the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, I mean, he's the ace, and so for me, when you get the opportunity and you got a guy like Tony Pollard who's shown that he can, obviously produce, I like him. I like him this week against the Broncos. I know the Broncos got a tough defense, but Tony Pollard's going to get plenty of opportunity. They're going to find ways to get him the ball in multiple spots. And when you look at it from that viewpoint, I think he'll be productive. So I like him as well.
So we have a couple guys that Dave likes and I like that are in more committee backfields, at least the expectation going into the training camp process and even into week one. So, Dave, you like Jalen Warren as a starter. I like Aaron Jones as a starter. Robert, when you look at the backfields for Pittsburgh and for Minnesota, is there a clear-cut leader for you from this point forward? Whether it's Jalen Warren or Caleb Johnson, whether it's Aaron Jones or Jordan Mason, how are you approaching the Pittsburgh and Minnesota backfields this week?
Well, for Pittsburgh, I have no idea who's going to be the clear-cut guy in this backfield, particularly because, you got Caleb Johnson, obviously a rook, and then Jalen Warren, although he's had, some production over the course of his career, he's never had to be the guy, the number one guy. And so that concerns me a little bit in terms of what I'm going to be able to get from him. Aaron Jones has shown over the course of his entire career that he can be a number one. And I think he's still that, even with Jordan Mason in the backfield in Minnesota. So I'm much more comfortable with Aaron Jones as my starter this week as opposed to Jalen Warren.
And with Warren, I mean, the breadcrumbs were out there are all training camp long. You got a contract extension. The other running backs in Pittsburgh weren't really impressing, certainly not on a consistent basis. And then Mike Tomlin came out and said he's our featured guy. You'll see a little bit of Kenneth Gainwell and Caleb Johnson as the game warrants. I feel pretty good about Jalen Warren getting a lot of work, kind of in that same vein that we were talking about with Tony Pollard. It's a tough matchup. It's the Jets. It's not going to be easy, but I think he'll be okay this week, so I don't mind starting Jalen Warren.
I don't mind it either. I love Aaron Jones this week. I absolutely love Aaron Jones this week. Last 12 games against the Chicago Bears, obviously majority of that was with the Green Bay Packers, but even the 2 games last year, he has averaged in those 12 games 18.3 PPR points per game. He owns Chicago. We used to talk about Aaron Jones owning Chicago. Aaron Rodgers used to own Chicago. Let me get that right. Aaron Rodgers used to own Chicago.
Chicago can have 2 owners,
Let's
and they're
go.
both named Aaron.
Yep, Aaron squared owns the Chicago Bears, and Aaron Jones will have a big game. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the season goes on between Jordan Mason and what happens there, but Aaron Jones in week 1 must start running back. Not that there's, I think, a lot of people debating that depending on when he was drafted, but love the setup for him taking on this Bears defense. Let's look at the running backs that we're looking to sit this week. So, Dave, you can make the argument against Tony Pollard because Robert likes him, as does Heath. Heath, you don't like R.J. Harvey. Robert agrees with you on that one. And then I want to talk to Robert about Breece Hall real quick. So why are we sitting Tony Pollard?
Because it's well and good that he might get 20 touches in the game, and it does make sense. I don't know how competitive this game is going to be. This is the Denver Broncos defense that was outstanding last year against the Titans offense piloted by Cam Ward, rookie number 1 overall pick, his very first NFL game on the road. This narrative screams trouble for the Tennessee Titans in every way, shape, and form. And so I'm nervous. If the Broncos do what I expect them to do as an offense, it means that the Titans are going to be chasing points, and they might be having to do that before it's even halftime. And that takes Tony Pollard carries off the table for them. It might mean he's going to have to carry his fantasy stats through the air. It's possible, but I don't know if I love it. And the Titans have talked about using another running back alongside Tony Pollard.
Julius Chestnut, here we come. All right, Robert, quickly.
Hello, Mullings, here we come.
Breece Hall, I'm nervous. Steelers matchup, not good. Losing Elijah Vera Tucker, not good. We could see Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis working in. Your thoughts on Breece Hall, again, for this weekend, for the season?
Yeah, you want to talk about guys who are tough to judge. You know, this week, Breece Hall certainly fits into that category just because we don't know how the Jets are going to use him. You know, he went from a guy who was a perennial RB1, you know, essentially, to a guy that we have no idea you know, how he's going to be used and what kind of production you're going to get, particularly because of Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, who are likely going to be able to rotate, you know, into the fold there in the backfield. And so I wouldn't start him this week, personally. If I got, you know, Breece Hall on my roster, I'm likely not starting him because I need to see first. If I've got depth, you know, I want to hold him and see how the Jets are utilizing him this week.
Yep, certainly want to see that rotation and how the offensive line holds up. They're going to get tested very well against that Steelers defense. All right, Robert, I'm going to give you our sleepers. You pick the one that you like the best and give us your take on these 3 guys here. So for Heath, his sleeper for week 1 is Dylan Sampson, sharing the ball there with Jerome Ford. Dave's guy is Jordan Mason, as we talked about, sharing the ball with Aaron Jones. And my guy is Ollie Gordon. We don't know the full status of Devon Etienne. So you got Gordon taking on the Colts, you got Mason taking on the Bears, and you got Dylan Sampson taking on the Bengals. Who do you like the best?
Ooh. I like Sampson. I like the Sampson pick. All right. He did some good things in the preseason. And you know, the Cleveland Browns, you know, they do a good job using multiple backs in their system. And Dylan Sampson is a guy that they like. I'm not very fond of they got the Colts, right? You know,
the Browns have the Bengals.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Definitely not fond of the Bengals run defense at all. Okay. So I think from a run game standpoint, the Bengals can have a lot of success. The Browns can have a lot of success.
I'm learning. You know, it was a year ago we were on this show, and Robert was telling me what an idiot I was for doubting Derrick Henry and doubting Saquon Barkley, and he was right. And I learned over the course of the last year, we're on the same page with like 4 different guys going into week 1. It's going to be a much better season.
Oh, I like it. So we're a little synergy here that we're all on the same page. So like the way that works. All right, Robert, thanks for joining us. We appreciate the running back breakdown. We're going to take a quick break here on Fantasy Football today. When we come back and look at the wide receivers and their rankings for week number 1. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. We're looking at our wide receiver rankings for week number 1, and you see the top 12. No surprise here with a lot of the names that we're talking about here. Maybe Mike Evans taking a little bit of a leap from the preseason into the top 10. Great matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, and no Chris Godwin, no Jalen McMillan. As we show you the list 13 through 24, we're going to talk about the players that were the toughest for us to rank, and we're starting to get into the range of some of these guys. For Dave, it was Ricky Pearsall. For Heath, it was Travis Hunter. For me, it was Zay Flowers. Heath, I think when we talk about Travis Hunter, it's going to be one of the toughest guys to rank all season long.
I hope not. I hope he comes out in week 1 and plays 75% of the snaps and goes 5 for 95 in a score, and you just never think about benching him again. It's been such an interesting back and forth of these news reports that we get out that he's going to play 80% of the offensive snaps. And then the next week, he's going to primarily play defense. And then most recently on the depth chart, he's wide receiver. He's a starting wide receiver and a backup defensive back. So we're going to find out a lot. I'm probably just going to start him in most of my leagues because I don't want to leave that type of upside on the bench. I do believe if he's a full-time wide receiver this year, he has top 12 upside.
We could see him line up against Teterow and McMillan as we look at the guys that we're talking about as starts, Dave, and Teterow as one of the guys you're starting this week. So how much fun will that matchup be, McMillan versus Hunter? as a fantasy decision and as a real-life proposition when we see those guys, one on defense, one on offense?
Well, in real life, we saw it in college. And Tetairoa McMillan got the best of Travis Hunter on a couple of plays. In fantasy, there's no question. I'm taking Tetairoa McMillan because I think he can play 100% of the snaps for the Carolina Panthers, and I know he's going to be the number one wide receiver, and I think he can beat any type of coverage the Jaguars throw at him. He's got the size, he's got the quickness, he can get open, and he can make some big plays. We saw it in the preseason. Obviously, we saw it in college. He is a top 24 wide receiver for me in his very first NFL game.
Guy that you're starting this week, Heath, is Deebo Samuel, and a lot of talk about the Commanders' receiving core because of Terry McLaurin. Mm-hmm. Does this play into McLaurin maybe getting off to a slow start because of lack of practice time, or are you just all in on Deebo Samuel for this week against the Giants?
Well, I'm all in on Jaden Daniels, and so I pretty much want everybody that's catching passes from him. I expect him to have a very good week. He's my number one quarterback for the week and for the season. I do think it's a kind of a boost to Deebo that Terry McLaurin was absent so much during training camp, and Deebo Samuel got so much attention playing as the wide receiver one for the Commanders in that situation. I think he meshes perfectly with McLaurin's skill set. McLaurin can take guys deep. Deebo can work underneath. It's going to be a good year for both of them.
Should be fun to see how it goes against the Giants pass rush. That could be a little bit of a problem, but the secondary, that's still definitely a work in progress. And a defense that is going to be a work in progress most likely all season is Cincinnati Bengals. I'm starting Jerry Jeudy with all the confidence in the world because Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback, and Jeudy last year was unbelievable when it wasn't Deshaun Watson. Now we'll see what Cedric Tillman does, because when we first saw the quarterback change, Tillman was out producing Jerry Jeudy. Obviously the tight end there and David Njoku is going to be fun. You have manifested that Harold Fannin is going to have a big week one as well. So we'll see how all these pass catchers work in Cleveland, but I like the situation for Jerry Jeudy as a top 20 wide receiver. Let's look at the guys that we're talking about as sits, and three big names that we have here. For me, it's Garrett Wilson. For you, it is DK Metcalf, and for you, it's Calvin Ridley. Is Ridley, just as Adam Azer said on our podcast, the poster child for who to sit this week when we talk about starts and sits?
Yeah, he was wide receiver 31 for me when I woke up this morning, and I woke up with a panic. That's too high. Yeah. So he's now outside of the top.
Welcome to my range.
He's outside of the top 36 wide receivers for me. I think he's going to have a good year. I think Cam Ward will be good for him eventually. This is an awful matchup. All the terrible things that Dave said about Tony Pollard are even more true about the guy who has to catch passes against Pat Surtain.
You don't like DK Metcalf, Dave, and it's a lot of people looking at it and said, well, I drafted him as a top 4 or 5 round player, a top 20 caliber wide receiver.
Sure.
Am I really sitting him in week one against the Jets?
Yeah, I think you can. It really depends on who else you have at wide receiver. And if you want to call him a flex or a number 3 wide receiver, I think he's worthy of that. But as a top 24 type of wide receiver, I'm nervous. I think the matchup is going to be very tough against a Jets defense that will probably play more man coverage now than they ever have when Sauce Gardner was there. Gardner will probably be on DK Metcalf's hip for the entire game. It's Aaron Rodgers under center. I don't know how much throwing Aaron Rodgers is going to need to do. This feels like a low-scoring game. We talked about that. This is really a matchup where I think DK's numbers could go down a little bit. In week 2, he's got Seattle. That's a revenge game, obviously. So I wonder if DK's kind of circling that game on his calendar anyway.
We'll find out. Another revenge game is Justin Fields taking on the Steelers because he played there last year. Garrett Wilson's going to be his number 1 receiver. We kind of got a little nervous, I think, about Garrett Wilson from the start of the draft process as we saw Fields throw the ball. I'm hopeful Wilson dominates targets, comes out, has a big game, but I'm nervous just because of this defense and how the Steelers will contain Justin Fields and I think contain Garrett Wilson. So a starter in 3 receiver leagues, but not a must-start guy in 2 wide receiver formats, even though you may have drafted him that way. I think in one of my leagues, I actually have my only 2 receivers. It might be our podcast league. My top 2 receivers are DK Metcalf and Garrett Wilson. Don't love that setup, but hopefully the quarterback and running backs will carry me through for at least week number 1. Or I might have to turn to some sleepers, and that's what we're looking at next year. So you like Cooper Kupp this week. You like Rashid Shaheed this week. I'm going with Demario Douglas. Are people just forgetting about Cooper Kupp?
Well, they've definitely forgotten what he did in week 1 last year when he caught 14 passes for over 100 yards and scored a touchdown. And he's basically done similar to that each of the last 3 week ones. Cooper Kupp's problem throughout his career, and especially lately, has been that he's had a hard time staying healthy. He's healthy going into week 1. I think you should expect 8 to 9 plus targets from Cooper Kupp, and definitely a top 36 guy.
So if he's getting that many targets and JSN's getting 7,
I think
8?
probably very similar, but maybe a little more.
Okay. Do we see anything from Torrey Horton? Do we see anything from the tight ends? Do we see anything from the backside of the backfield?
I don't think they're going to have 3 wide receivers on the field all that often.
Right.
I think it's going to be a lot of 2 tight end sets. It's going to be a lot of running. A running back might be 3rd on this team in targets.
Yeah, they'll play with a fullback a lot this year, too.
I'm surprised you are supporting anything from the Saints not named Alvin Kamara.
Because I think they're going to have to throw a lot every single week, and I'm hoping that volume not only carries Chris Olave, it looks like he's going to line up in the slot a lot more, but Rashid Shaheed, not only, we know he can win downfield. I don't want to count on him for that. I want to count on him for what he does in the short and intermediate area. I think Kellen Moore can design the offense to make it easy on Spencer Rattler. And as improved as the pass rush is for Arizona, I still have questions about the secondary there. And I think Shaheed can beat them for a nice catch and run, maybe some big plays after that. So as far as sleepers go, as far as number 3 wide receivers go, I think Shaheed's in the conversation. Now, these are our rankings, consensus 37 through 48. These are number 4 types of wide receivers. I'm surprised that Olave is in here. And honestly, I think Shaheed shouldn't be in this list either. I think they should both be a little bit higher because those Saints are going to have to throw a lot.
I just don't want to trust them. That's really what it comes down to. Is I don't want to have to trust them in week 1, but we are talking about guys that could be some desperation plays. The same thing goes for Demario Douglas. Again, slot receiver for Josh McDaniels, for Drake Maye. Great matchup against the Raiders. If I like Drake Maye, I got to like some of his pass catchers. And Stephon Diggs, while off the injury report, still could be a little bit limited. He's talking about he hopes he does not have a snap count. So we could see a lot of Demario Douglas being one of the high-volume target getters for Drake Maye in week number 1. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We come back and get into the tight ends and our week 1 rankings for that position. Guess who's at the top? We'll show you next here on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Here are our tight end rankings for week number 1, our consensus rankings of Heath Cummings, Dave Richard, and myself, Jamey Eisenberg. And no surprise with the 3 guys at the top. These were the 3 guys that we were saying these are the great tight ends for 2025 and should be great in week 1. Bowers taking on the Patriots, McBride taking on the Saints, and George Kittle taking on the Seahawks. Let's get McBride a touchdown right out of the gate and just not have to worry about that. So hopefully that'll be fun to see.
Perfect matchup for it.
Number 4, though, is our consensus tight end in Travis Kelce. I'm a little nervous just because the situation could be great. No Rashee Rice for the first 6 games. But I'm a little nervous just about the setup taking on Derwin James and the Chargers. Can make this a little tough for him. So you're starting him, no question. But he was my toughest guy to rank for this week. I guess you guys didn't share that same sentiment.
No, I still think target and volume numbers are going to be good for him. I'm not expecting him to make a bunch of splash plays and yards after the catch. Obviously, in the red zone, he's going to get a lot of attention anyway, but I'm looking for him to get around 5 catches, 60, 70 yards on top of that. That's 12 PPR points, what he averaged last year.
Yep.
Figures what he should be able to do this week against the Chargers.
They've got to get him in the end zone so we can do the down on one knee touchdown celebration.
Oh, yeah, we got a new one. Yeah, the engagement celebration. All right, so Heath, the toughest guy for you to rank is Tyler Warren. Dave, the guy that you're starting this week, at least in your suggestion for starts and sits, is Tyler Warren. So why are you having a little tough time where to put him in your rankings, and why are you so confident?
Daniel Jones. No, I won't be that quick, but it's a rookie tight end, Daniel Jones at quarterback, Michael Pittman and Josh Downs already there. I think he can be great. I don't think he's Brock Bowers, but I think he can be great. I have a hard time trusting it week 1 with Daniel Jones.
I agree with the sentiment, but I do think Daniel Jones is going to want to get that ball out fast. And I think the Colts really want to make it a point to get Tyler Warren involved. And so I think we're going to see a lot of targets from him. Daniel Jones isn't going to have time to throw downfield to where Pittman has been over the last few years. And Downs is somebody who could take work away from Tyler Warren. I think Tyler Warren is going to be used in a bunch of different ways that we haven't even seen yet. I think he's going to end up being a top 12 tight end this week.
Listen, I think the way that the draft process finished, a lot of people are counting on that to be the case. You're concerned about another rookie tight end, a guy that you're sitting this week is Colston Loveland.
Well, I'm actually sitting Warren, too. I mean, he was the hardest guy to rank, but I'm sitting the rookie tight ends. And it's just, again, what is the snap share? What is the target share in their very first NFL game? And for the Bears in particular, against a very good Vikings defense, it will be very interesting.
Will be very interesting. And you said the toughest guy for you to rank was Kyle Pitts. He's a guy.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out how far I wanted to move him down.
I'll tell you what, though. We got a couple of things that are working in his favor here. First off, Darnell Mooney, will find out how healthy his shoulder is if he's going to play and how effective he'll be. He was awesome last year against this defense, against Tampa Bay. It was the only 2 games where he did something of significance. In his 2 games against Tampa Bay, 11 catches, 179 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 13 targets, at least 15.8 PPR points in each of those matchups. And I think based on what Michael Penix said all offseason, Come out and prove it. If this is your buddy, this is your golfing guy. We got the Breakfast Club in Detroit, with the Rams, and now we have the golfing club here with the Falcons. So we could see Pitts hopefully get off to a good start. I agree with you. He's tough to rank. Trust me.
Right.
I don't think anybody wants to start him, but could be a fun situation here for Kyle Pitts.
He's easier to start if Darnell Mooney isn't at 100%.
Totally agree with that sentence. All right, couple guys that we're just going to go through the sits here. So you're sitting Colston Loveland. You're sitting Dalton Kincaid. I'm sitting Tucker Kraft. Again, I said this earlier just because he's probably the most prominent name of this trio. Is the history against the against the Lions not great, and they were number one in terms of fewest fantasy points allowed to opposing tight ends last year. Most people are not going to sit Tucker Kraft if you drafted him. You're not going to go pick up the guys that we're going to talk about as sleepers, Chig Okonkwo, Hunter Henry, Brenton Strange. You're still starting Kraft. I just would lower expectations personally, a little bit concerned based on Detroit getting healthier on defense. Make the case for Chig Okonkwo as a sleeper.
The Denver Broncos actually saw the 5th most tight end targets last year because nobody wants to throw the wide receivers against him. Okonkwo looks like he's going to play a higher snap share this year as well.
Make the case for Hunter Henry.
I think he's going to end up being one of those best buddies for Drake Maye over the course of the year, but against the Raiders and those linebackers, I think he ends up being somebody that is a focal point in their game plan.
And Brenton Strange, look, we'll find out how much Travis Hunter plays on offense. We'll see about Parker Washington and Diami Brown. He was very good last year when he got minimal targets. And I think this is a great opportunity against a team in the Carolina Panthers that struggles to defend tight ends. So Trevor Lawrence, we like him. We're going to like some of his targets. Brenton Strange could be one of those guys. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We're going to wrap up the show when we come back with your questions. Ask FFT next after the break. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. We got your questions, and we'll help you set those lineups for week number 1. Half PPR, sit 1 out of Tony Pollard, Jaylen Warren, or Emeka Egbuka. Dave, that was directed to you, so what's your answer?
I'm going to sit Pollard of those 3 in half PPR.
You would sit?
Egbuka.
Okay, I'm going to sit Pollard as well. Next question. Wisest prognosticators. Well, that's a good way to get us to answer your question. And Adam, of course. Sit 1 in half PPR. Matthew Golden, Tyrone Tracy Jr., or Juwan Jennings.
I'm sitting Jennings.
I'm sitting Jennings for sure right now. Probably still if he gets a full practice in, but it'd be much closer.
I'm sitting Jennings as well. Next question. Would you trade Dak Prescott and Jamison Williams for Joe Burrow in a 10-team league? So receivers are Malik Neighbors, Teteroa McMillan, Ricky Pearsall, Emeka Egbuka, and Keon Coleman. So would you give up Dak and Jamison Williams for Burrow? I would. Would you guys?
I would not. I'd love what Jamison Williams' upside is. See if you can give up Egbuka with Dak Prescott instead to get Joe Burrow.
I would do it.
Yeah, I think in a 10-team league you get the best player. So I would take that trade. With the 2025 season just about to start, let's see how you have been playing. How long have you been playing fantasy football, and who was the first person you remember drafting? So for me,
I remember my very firfirst pick.
My very first pick was Chris Carter in 1997.
My first pick was Barry Sanders in 1997.
I don't have any idea.
Have you been playing since 1997?
No, I was in high school in 1997. I'm not quite as old as you guys.
Yeah, that's true.
I actually won the first year because I picked up Randall Cunningham and had the Cunningham to Carter.
I think Donovan McNabb.
You were stacking before stacking was cool.
Stacking before stacking was cool. Any more questions?
I had Aikman. He wasn't very good.
Half PPR, 1 running back, 2 flex leagues, need to choose 2. Xavier Worthy, Teteroa McMillan, Tyler Warren, also have McBride and James Cook. So which 2 are you taking for these guys in a half PPR league?
I'm taking McMillan and Cook. And when I said Aikman wasn't good, he was obviously great as a quarterback, but for fantasy, he left a little bit to be desired.
Yeah, the names disappeared.
It's Cook and McMillan.
I would take Cook and McMillan also.
Was Worthy on there?
Worthy is
Worthy
on.
I'd start him over all those guys.
Wow.
Yeah, I struggle with that one too. Maybe just play the receivers. Cook could be tough against Baltimore. I mean, that's not an easy matchup.
I think he had about 11 PPR fantasy
gonna have to
points in
score.
2 games combined last year.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the receivers just to make it safe. It is half PPR, but still. All right, make sure you get those lineups right. Make sure you check out our Fantasy Football Today podcast. We're going to have you covered with everything that you need. Check out today's episode, which is the start sits for the AFC. Tomorrow we'll have the start sits for the NFC. You can find it wherever podcasts are available. Sunday morning, we have you covered at 11:30 a.m. on YouTube only. But, of course, we'll be recording on Friday 2 episodes with our mailbag, and then again on Sunday morning with Fantasy Football Today Express with all the last-minute tips that you need. For Heath Cummings, for Dave Richard, for Robert Turbin, and our great production staff, I'm Jamey Eisenberg. Thanks for watching Fantasy Football Today.